morning, Your Honor. First,
Hang on a second.
oh, sorry.
I haven't called us to order
Oh,
yet.
I am so sorry. I thought you said, sorry.
I said, let's bring the public in.
Okay.
I appreciate the eagerness, though. All right, are we broadcasting, Sandra? All right, this is a continued hearing in State v. Kohberger, CR 01243165. Defendant is again present with counsel Ms. Taylor and Ms. Massoth. The state is present, represented by Mr. Thompson, Mr. Nye, and Ms. Jennings. This morning's hearing will discuss the motions to suppress and any evidence related thereto, as well as we'll get into the argument on that. So with that, I understand the parties are prepared to proceed. The defense, do you have witnesses to call this morning?
We do, Your Honor. We have two.
All right, who's your first witness?
Corporal Brett Payne.
All right, let's get going with that then. If Corporal Payne would step forward. You were sworn yesterday, as I recall, but we'll go ahead and do it again just for formality's sake.
Good morning.
Morning, ma'am.
Could you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
Brett Payne, last is spelled Payne.
And what's your title?
I'm the Detective Corporal for Moscow Police Department.
Can you tell the court, I know you testified yesterday, but it was a different hearing, and so just to lay a little bit of foundation, can you tell the court your background in law enforcement?
So I've been with Moscow Police Department for almost 7 years now. Prior to that, I was in the active duty military for 6. 3 of those were as a commissioned officer in the Military Police Corps.
What is your role in this case?
I was assigned lead detective in this particular investigation.
And so, as lead detective, can you explain from your perspective what that has meant that you have done?
Certainly. So it was my responsibility to basically view this investigation from a 30,000-foot view, if you will. Directly, it's the teams that were assigned to various tasks, and then take in all that information, synthesize it, put it back out to our group, and then eventually consolidate it into an affidavit.
And in terms of that affidavit, yesterday there was some discussion and testimony about that and how it was created. Would you explain that?
Absolutely. So the information was brought to us via various teams and specialists in their particular areas. For instance, most of the cell phone stuff was covered by Special Agent Balance from the FBI. All that information was brought to the team, relayed back out at least twice a day, and then as that information was essentially synthesized, it was put into a running document, a living document that is now known as Exhibit A.
So when it was characterized yesterday as a group effort, do you agree with that characterization of it?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you know approximately how many warrants you worked on in this case?
I don't, ma'am. Several. I don't know the exact number.
Right. I'm going to walk you through several segments of different warrants, and some of this may seem choppy, but I'm going to try to do you and then Detective Mowry at once instead of bringing you back and forth. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. Sounds good.
All right. And Judge, I have paper exhibits for you and for the witness, and so I'll go as fast as I can, but I want you to be able to look at what he's looking at. So we're going to begin with the first AT&T warrant. Prior to this case, had you ever secured an AT&T warrant?
No, ma'am. I don't believe I had.
And so, given that, who did you rely on in creating the warrant for
Largely
AT&T?
Special Agent Balance. Obviously, he's the CAS expert, so I relied heavily on his input.
At the time that AT&T warrant 1 was secured, were you co-located with Special Agent Balance?
I believe so, yes.
Can you, well, in terms of being more specific, it was December 23rd. Were you two co-located at that time?
I believe so, yes.
And I know co-located has been talked about in court a couple of times, but can you just explain what it means for you two to be co-located since he's from DC?
Certainly. Yeah, he was in the same building as I was, just mere feet away from the command post.
Okay, so when you say mere feet away, were you guys in like a cubicle setting or were you in offices with doors? What was this setting in terms of proximity to each other a few feet away?
Yeah, separate offices with doors, but in the same second floor of the Moscow Police Department.
Are you aware of Special Agent Balance in his work in doing AT&T records, having any access to AT&T records without a warrant?
I am not aware of that, no.
Are you aware of him having any ability to review AT&T records through any portal without a warrant?
Not to my knowledge, no.
I'm going to begin with what is known as State's Exhibit 1 attached to their objection to the motion to suppress AT&T warrant. And Judge, for today's purposes, what I'm doing is relying on the labels that are in the record as opposed to giving them new stickers.
This has been marked previously as State's S1, or is that 8-1? I can't.
I think it's SS for State 1.
All right, State's S1 affidavit for search warrant.
And now I've got to get,
Objection to the admission of that for today's hearing.
you know, Judge, I should have started out by saying that the same stipulation regarding the admission of all exhibits applies today.
We do need the formality of moving for the admission, however. So that's why
I can do that. Do you want me to do that per exhibit?
well, it makes, as you're talking about them, it probably makes sense.
Okay, I've got to get myself S1. Okay, Detective Payne, can you look at page 5?
Yes, ma'am.
On page 5, can you read what it says in the, at the very end of the page, in the sentence above wherefore that begins with, the paragraph, it begins in support. Can you read that paragraph?
Certainly. In support of the assertion as to the existence of probable cause, the following facts are offered based upon personal knowledge of affiant. See attached statement of Brett Payne, which is marked Exhibit A and incorporated as though fully set forth herein.
And is that S1 the affidavit in support of the search warrant?
Yes, it is.
And that's the AT&T 1 search warrant that was the first one served on December 23rd, correct?
That's correct.
And that language that you put in there, Exhibit A, is incorporated as though fully set forth herein. Is that the language you just read?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I'm now going to hand you State's Exhibit 2 to the AT&T first warrant. Can you review that first page, the first paragraph?
Of S2.
Pardon?
Are you seeking the admission of S2?
I am seeking the admission of S2. Just to be clear, Judge, all of these that I'm putting before him and the ones that are attached, we're seeking the admission of.
No objection to S2? All right, it's admitted.
Have you reviewed that, Detective Payne? Do you see that the language that I just referred to in the search warrant affidavit, do you see that same language in this warrant in where you incorporate the affidavit, incorporate Exhibit A into your, you see that language
Ma'am.
in S2? And is S2 the actual search warrant for AT&T?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Can you turn to the last page on page 4? What time was the warrant served?
10:03 a.m.
Do you recall that the return on that warrant came in at 3:30 that day?
That would sound correct. I don't remember specifically.
Would it help if I showed you the AT&T mobility propriety front page to verify?
Yes, ma'am.
Judge, I'm not seeking the admission of this, just for purposes of him being able to be certain. Sorry.
The witness may be shown the document to refresh his recollection.
Yes, Your Honor.
And Judge, for the record, this has also been admitted already in Frank's D17, page 634. Detective, can you see on that that came in at, I think it's 15:30? It's,
15:31.
okay, thank you. I'm now handing you Defense Exhibit A to the reply to the AT&T suppression motion.
This doesn't have a sticker on it?
Pardon?
This does not appear to have a sticker on it.
No, it does not, but it is attached to the reply as Exhibit A, AT&T. And that reply is, okay. Can you see line 4 there? Oh, sorry, Judge.
That copy and put, let's just, do you have a number that we were going to call this?
I would call it Exhibit A to reply, because that's what it is in the record. You see at the bottom of the page where it says Exhibit A, AT&T?
So this is the return of the warrant of S2?
Yes.
All right, let's call it S2.2. Or 2.1, pardon me.
That's fine.
The fact that it's associated with that particular warrant. Allowed to touch stickers under the union contract, so why don't you give it to the bailiff?
Detective Payne, on page 2 of that Exhibit A, it's actually just the front page where it says Affidavit of Brett Payne. What does paragraph 4 say?
Paragraph 4 or line 4?
Line, well, 1, 2. line 4.
It says the warrant was served on 12/23/2022 by email, fax, et cetera.
So do you know exactly what method was used?
I don't remember.
Okay. And it says warrant in that line, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Does it say anything about the affidavit in support of search warrant accompanying the warrant?
Oh, ma'am.
On the next page, the receipt and inventory of warrant, do you see that?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you look at description of property? What does that say?
It says 509-592-8458.
Can you explain how that's a description of property and what that means?
It just means essentially that there was the information retrieved as a result of that phone number being queried with AT&T.
And it indicates that that was produced how?
Entrance was obtained by email.
And when that was received, did you do anything to verify that the data was within the date ranges of November 12th to November 14th of 2022?
I don't remember. That information was provided to Special Agent Balance as soon as it was received.
Do you have, when you say that it was provided to Special Agent Balance, is that because you don't have the capacity, technical skills, I guess, to review that raw data and do something with it?
Yes, ma'am.
Was there anybody else that you relied on for that, other than Special Agent Balance?
Not that memory brings to mind.
Let's now turn to the AT&T 2, Pen, Trap, and also known as Pen, Trap, and Trace. Can you explain what a Pen, Trap, and Trace is?
So, pen register, best of my knowledge, now granted, I am, as I've stated before, I'm not an expert in cell phone stuff, but best of my knowledge, a pen register tracks incoming and outgoing phone calls, text messages, so on and so forth. And then the trap and trace is the portion that essentially gives you location data, or the precision data, precision location data rather. So it's essentially incoming and outgoing calls, what messages are received, and then part of that was where that phone was located when it was doing it.
Was it required that you secure the AT&T first warrant to obtain the second warrant that included a Pen, Trap, and Trace?
I don't believe it was required.
So when the data was received on at 3:30, you gave that data was given to Special Agent Balance?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then what happened in between 3:30 and 4:53 when the second warrant was secured?
Are you talking technically speaking, or can I speak in generalities? Because that's all I really know.
Well, I want you to talk about what you know.
So the only thing I know is that that information was provided to Special Agent Balance. He utilized whatever tools he has at his disposal, and then it was decided upon to go after the second Pen, Trap, and Trace.
When did you start drafting that second trap and trace?
I don't remember.
So on that day, you did one in the morning that was secured at 10:03,
Yes, ma'am.
and then the second one was secured at 4:53 p.m. And you don't have a recollection of when you were working on those?
I don't remember, no.
All right. I think you have State's Exhibit 2 in front of you.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you flip back to that one? Can you see on page 1, what does it say that the time of that warrant was obtained?
Talking about State's Exhibit 2. Oh, 10:03 is what it says. Is that what you're referring to?
No, I'm referring to the return, which should be in, I might be referring you to the wrong exhibit.
Point 1, I believe.
And that was at 453. The second warrant was obtained at 453. I might not have handed you pin trap.
I don't think I have that one.
Yeah, my understanding is, just so we're clear, because I'm getting a little confused, is that we have the affidavit for warrant, the warrant and the return of the warrant all related to the first warrant to AT&T. And we haven't got the pin trap and trace warrant presented yet, I don't think.
Right, I've got it here. And Judge, for clarification purposes too, today as we're going through testimony, my plan was not to go through every single warrant that we're arguing about and get it in front of the court. I'm really trying to take kind of a scalpel approach on the issues that we want to point out to the court. So it does really feel like I'm jumping around, and I realize that. I hope to bring it all together in the end.
The only caveat being what I've told you before is where you have as a broad array of documentation that you've presented. The court will not scour the record to find support for your motions that's not pointed out to the court specifically. And that's well established with case law from the Idaho Supreme Court.
And Judge, that's why I am trying to grab the pieces and parts that I want you to be able to identify, and that's why I'm putting the paper in front of you. So I'm hearing you when you've asked us to do that. All right, I'm handing you State's Exhibit 1. And this is to the second AT&T warrant, also known as pin trap and trace.
This one is also listed as S1 on the sticker. So that's going to cause some problem, I suppose.
It's S1 attached to a different motion to suppress.
Well, hopefully we can figure it out when we're looking at the entire record, but
Yeah. And what I think, Judge, when you are going back and working with your clerk.
my concern, frankly, I know what all the documents are and what they relate to.
Yeah.
My concern is a reviewing court's ability to understand what you're talking about in court today and trace it to a stack of documents. That's my concern for this, so.
And I understand that. And so in preparation for today, I mean, I really did think, do I need to go through and label all of these? And I thought that would create more confusion in the record because these are all attached to specific motions with these labels.
This is marked S1, titled Affidavit for Search Warrant and Application for an Order for PIN Register or a Trap and Trace Device.
Yes.
So that we're clear on the record what we're looking at.
So Detective Payne, is that the warrant that affidavit in support of the search warrant that you drafted for that second AT&T warrant?
Yes, ma'am.
On page 11, at the bottom of the page, can you read that last sentence under probable cause?
Certainly. In support of the assertion as to the existence of probable cause, the following facts are offered based upon personal knowledge of the affiant. See attached statement of Brett Payne, which is marked Exhibit A and incorporated as though fully set forth herein.
All right, I am now handing you S2, which is the search warrant and order authorizing installation and/or use of PIN register trap and trace device. and non-disclosure order pursuant to Idaho Code 18-6772. Can you please turn to page 7? Can you see what time that was obtained?
4:53 PM.
I'm now handing you what is titled Return of Search Warrant, Exhibit A to Trap and Trace.
Does that have a sticker on it?
Pardon?
Does that have a sticker on it?
No, it does not.
It's 2.2.
What'd you call that, Judge?
S-2.2.
S-2.2.
Further delineated by the title, which is related to the pen, trap, and trace.
On page, can you look at page 2? You see the top, who does it say it's the affidavit of?
Corporal Brett Payne.
Are you looking at Exhibit A, page 2?
Oh, correction, I see what you mean. Affidavit of Lawrence Mowry is what it says at the top.
Right, and then but is that actually your
It is, yes, ma'am.
affidavit? Okay, so that was a mistake.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, what were you looking at?
On page 2, the top of it says affidavit of Lawrence Mowry.
Oh, gotcha.
It's the affidavit of Corporal Payne.
A heading problem there.
I'm now handing you Exhibit C to the reply to Trap and Trace. It does not have a sticker, and it says AT&T Mobility Carrier Request Form.
This again relates to the trap and trace warrant.
It does.
Let's mark that S2.3. In the next day or so, if you would provide a formal identification list, if you will, of the exhibits that you'd stipulated to admission to yesterday, as I don't think we went through those individually, just so that there's a record of that.
We can do that. Might take us a couple days, but we can do that. Can you look at, are you looking at that Exhibit C, Detective? Was cell site location data requested for this warrant on this page?
Yes, ma'am.
And was a timing advance report requested on this page? I'll refer you to the last paragraph where it says remark special instructions.
Yes, ma'am.
And do you see any reference in this document indicating that the affidavit in support of search warrant was included with the warrant?
No, ma'am.
Okay, the next warrant I want to talk about is Apple. Prior to this case, had you ever prepared an Apple warrant?
I don't remember.
What was your training related to Apple warrants in December of 2022?
I had no official training at that time.
I'm handing you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit A. It does have a sticker, and it's to the Apple motion. Can you state what that document is?
Appears to be a preservation request.
And who is it sent to?
Apple Corporate Legal Counsel,
And what's its date? What is the date on it
December 21st.
of 2022?
Correct.
And that letter was not sent by you, right?
No, I do not remember sending this, no.
Well, can you look at
No, that's not me.
yeah, the top of it is Department of Justice, and the back, page 2 is Special Agent in Charge Dennis Rice.
Correct.
How was the DeSales email account known at that date?
I don't remember.
How did you become aware of an Apple product in this case?
Memory serves, when the search warrant in Pennsylvania was executed, there was an iPad that was located in one of the shared living spaces in the home. And there was a receipt in his vehicle, in Mr. Kohberger's vehicle, that was found for an iPad as well.
And during the home search, was the iPad seized?
It was not.
Why not?
It was in a shared living space.
Do you remember what day that the Apple account was created?
I don't remember, no ma'am.
Does 2016 sound familiar with the research?
That sounds vaguely familiar, yep.
And you mentioned the receipt that was found in his car. Do you recall the date that indicated that an Apple product was purchased?
I do not remember.
Great. I will show you State's Exhibit 1. To the affidavit for search warrant. And I believe it's tabbed, the receipt.
This is State's Exhibit S1 affidavit for search warrant to Apple Inc.
And it's 2018, the date.
Yes, ma'am.
Where did you get the form to prepare the Apple warrant?
Form? Be more specific?
Correct, well, the search, so you're looking at the search warrant affidavit, and inside of that affidavit is a long list of items that you request.
Yes, ma'am.
Where did you get that information to be able to include that?
That was all provided to me from the experts in that particular field.
I'm just getting S1 in front of myself for a minute here, Judge, so I don't, or I'm gonna have to give him a different exhibit.
Just so I'm clear, are those when you said the long list, are you referring to paragraph B on page 2?
On page 2, beginning on page 2,
Is that what you're referring to?
I'm referring to everything A through I.
I'm sorry, was there a question pending? I kind of threw us down a side alley there, so I apologize if there was a question pending that I threw you off from.
No, that's fine, I'm looking for the page here. Do you recall that in your affidavit, there's reference that iOS devices can use an iCloud account to back up the iOS device?
Yes, ma'am. That sounds familiar.
And what's your understanding when an iOS device uses an iCloud to back it up?
Similar to Google and many other of these digital operating systems, essentially they back it up to a cloud account. That information is stored not on your device only, but also in a cloud storage area. And that's my understanding of it.
And so in an Apple phone, that ends up as creating a duplication of what's on the phone?
Essentially, yes.
And do you recall that in the affidavit, you made reference to the fact that Apple users get 5 gigabytes typically of storage and then can purchase more?
Yes, ma'am.
Exhibit D. I'm handing you what's been marked as Exhibit D it's Defendant's Exhibit D to the Apple memorandum in support of suppression, and it is it does have a sticker.
All right, it's marked Defendant's Exhibit D, date 11/14/24, entitled Affidavit for Search Warrant, directed to Apple Inc.
Can you please turn to page 27?
The actual warrant itself that you're,
Yes.
yes, ma'am.
Well, it's, I don't want to answer that as a yes before I look and make sure what this exhibit is.
Want to make sure, because my page numbers run out at 25.
It's Exhibit A, and it's to the Apple warrant. It says, so Exhibit D, Apple, at the bottom, that page says page 27, but above that, it says page 23.
Yep, I'm there.
Okay. At the top, it says, on January 27th, Apple Inc.'s Privacy and Law Enforcement Compliance Office responded
Sorry,
with the
Counsel.
requested records.
I'm not there, so can you?
Oh, I'm
give me some
sorry.
direction? Are we looking at state
Exhibit D,
D?
yeah, page 27 of my marking bait. So it says Exhibit D, Apple page 27.
On January 27, 2023.
Yes.
All right, go
yes.
ahead.
On January 27th, 2023, Apple Inc.'s Privacy and Law Enforcement Compliance Office responded with the requested records. Can you explain what Apple responded to?
I don't remember what all they responded to. They responded to the search warrant and all those listed items that were in the warrant itself.
And the warrant, the date on this, if you will turn to, let's see. Turn to page 34 of the exhibit. Do you see the date of the warrant?
1st of August.
So I understand that you just said you don't know or you don't remember, but in this context, in your search warrant affidavit, you make reference to something being produced on January 27th to process to get a warrant on August 1st. Do you know what the process was that Apple responded to or what they produced?
I do not remember. No, ma'am.
I am handing you Defendant's Exhibit B to the Apple Defendant's Memorandum in Support. It does have a sticker on it.
All right, the exhibit, just for the record, is Defendant's Exhibit B, date 11/14/24 on the sticker, and the title is Certification of Apple Inc. Custodian of Records.
Detective Payne, on this, there's a certification, this document is a certification of Apple Inc. Custodian of Records. Do you see that?
Yes, ma'am.
And it indicates that records are certified and being produced from legal process served on to Apple on January 12th, 2023.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you see that? What was served as legal process on Apple on January 12th, 2023?
I don't remember.
You know what the legal process would be?
I don't remember what that would have been.
Going back to Exhibit D. Do you have that one in front of you still?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you turn to page 35 of that?
Yep.
On line 4, what does it say?
Warrant was served by Corporal Payne on August 1st, 2023 via lawenforcement@apple.com.
And so that would have been the Apple warrant, right?
Correct.
And you served it, right?
I believe so.
Well, when you say you believe so, would you have executed an affidavit if you hadn't?
No, ma'am, I just wanted to make sure on the warrant return itself that it wasn't served by one of the digital forensics folks.
This affidavit is your affidavit, and on line 4, it says you served it, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you serve that with a copy of the search warrant affidavit?
No, ma'am.
Was it your practice in serving all of these warrants that where you actually did service, that you would serve the warrant only?
Yes, ma'am.
And then on Exhibit D, page 37,
Okay.
at the bottom where it says description of property, can you explain what the return was for that Apple warrant?
All account information associated data for the following Apple identifiers, and it goes through DSID, Apple ID, B. Kohberger at spartan.northampton.edu, another DSID, and Apple ID, Wi-Fi Army owns at yahoo.com.
Did you open up the Apple data and examine that?
I don't remember if I looked at what the return, like all the files that were attached were.
In terms of evaluating that Apple data, as the lead investigator, who have you put in charge of evaluating Apple data?
I relied on the specialists in those fields, which would be Detective Mowry and then S.A. Balance. Those are the folks who knew far more about it than me.
And do you know, as we sit here today, whose job it is to evaluate the Apple data for this case?
I don't know, ma'am. Not right now.
Okay, the next warrant we will talk about is Google. I'm handing you what's being marked as Defendants D to the Google memorandum in support of suppression.
Right, so that I'm clear and the record's clear, this is Defendant's Exhibit Number D with the date on the sticker of 11/14/24, which refers to the sticker date, I believe, not necessarily the document date. And then it's entitled Return of Search Warrant, the warrant being with respect to the application of search warrant for Google LLC. That as the other documents that were proffered are admitted.
Did you prepare the Google warrant returns Exhibit D?
Yes, ma'am.
On page 2 of that exhibit, does your affidavit say Detective Mowry served the warrant through a portal?
Yes, ma'am.
How did you know that?
Told me that.
When did you get the return, when you got the return, did you review the data?
I did not, ma'am.
Did you take any steps to see if the return conformed to the warrant?
I did not look at the technical data it contained within. I believe it was a zip file that was downloaded from Google, if memory serves me correctly. I downloaded it and made sure that that was there.
And do you recall that there were actually 3 Google warrants? Does that sound familiar? I'm going to hand you now Defendant's Exhibit E. The Defendant's Exhibit E to Google memorandum in support of motion to suppress.
All right, defendant's exhibit number E, again with the date on the sticker, 11/14/24. This is a receipt and inventory of warrant to Google.
On this document, under the description of property, can you state what Google account you put in as received?
Zip files for all digital records for the Google accounts of Bryan Christopher at gmail.com and username spelled a bit different at gmail.com.
Did you know that the email in the warrant is actually Bryan Christopher 1994 at gmail.com?
Oh, that sounds familiar. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So on that description, is that a mistake?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you do anything to, I asked you this, but you didn't do anything to verify that the data that you received from Google fit what was requested in the warrant?
No, ma'am. Not to my recollection.
Right. That's it for Google. You were in Pennsylvania for Mr. Kohberger's arrest, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you watched the preparation for service of the arrest warrant?
How do you mean?
Well, maybe I should ask this more open-ended. Tell us about your arrival in Pennsylvania in time-wise to his arrest, time frame of his arrest.
I believe we arrived there, if memory serves, about 7 p.m. on the 29th. And I think I get my dates right here. We observed final preparations for the SRT operation that was going to take place. And then we being myself and Detective Gilbertson from ISP, drove to a separate Pennsylvania State Police barracks to await the arrival of Mr. Kohberger.
When you were observing preparations, what were you observing?
I believe we observed their final tactical brief for SRT, and that was about it.
Can you explain what that was, what the preparations were that they were making when they were doing that tactical brief?
I can give you a general overview as best I got. So they had their entire SRT that was going to be conducting the operation present.
For the record, SRT is?
A special response team, usually what it stands for, Your Honor. So they were doing their final preparations, going over their approach, team member assignments, so on and so forth. This was all done via basically a briefing in front of everybody.
And do you recall that the preparations included that in preparation they were going to knock and announce in execution
I believe that was brought up, yes, ma'am.
of the warrant? Okay. And while you were there, did you go into and have were you given a tour, or did you drive into the gated community of Mr. Kohberger and see where he was living?
No, ma'am.
You never went in or around his home?
No, ma'am.
When the execution of the arrest was happening, did you have the ability to listen in any way?
The only ability that we had at the time was a very choppy drone feed. We were driving at the time it happened, and that was the only communication we had.
And so how is that choppy drone feed being communicated to you?
Via cell phone.
So can you explain that? Like, who's the person communicating with you about the drone? I just don't understand.
So essentially, it's a drone operator with their SRT. I don't remember how it was conveyed, a link of some sort. They dropped a drone, it took off. I got the link so we could essentially just watch a live feed of what the drone was seeing, and that was it.
Do you know if that live feed was recorded?
I do not know, ma'am.
Did you record the, while that was happening? Did you create a recording?
No, ma'am.
What is a Bearcat?
Bearcat's an armored vehicle used in SWAT operations.
And do you know what role the Bearcat, describe that vehicle again?
So they're usually built on, I think it's like a Ford F-250 chassis. So it's a pickup cab essentially, but it's got a large box compartment in the back, for lack of a better term. Usually has portholes on the sides. It's highly up-armored to protect the occupants, being SWAT operators. And they usually use them as an approach vehicle, so they have a covered location to deploy from.
Is it like a retrofitted military
No,
piece of
ma'am.
machinery?
No, ma'am.
It's specifically a law enforcement piece of machinery?
Yes, ma'am.
And it sounds like it's really big.
It depends on what you're comparing it to. I'd say it's no bigger than, if you were to have a pickup camper on the back of an F-250, something like that.
And what's your understanding of where that Bearcat was parked for the arrest?
I believe the Bearcat, if memory serves, drove up the driveway and just parked in front of the house.
I'm handing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 5 to the motion to suppress, and it was attached to 119 Lambsden.
All right, this is marked with an exhibit sticker S5. Title of the document is Pennsylvania State Police. Heading with essentially a letter directed to Detective Payne.
Detective Payne, can you explain what that letter is?
That's a justification for reasoning for amending the original plan for knock and announce to a hasty knock and announce and quicker entry into the Kohberger home.
When did you receive that?
I believe this was recently. I don't remember what date.
When you say recently, was it received in response to prepare for today's suppression hearing?
I believe so.
Do you know why Mr. Lang didn't date the letter?
I have to ask him, ma'am.
And so in that correspondence, he explains that the knock and announce was shortened to announcing from the Bearcat with immediate forced entry.
Yes, ma'am.
Were you present when Detective Gilbert Mirandized Mr. Kohberger at the station?
Detective Gilbertson?
Gilbertson, sorry, yes.
Yes, ma'am.
And that took place after Mr. Kohberger was first seized in his home, right?
Correct.
That also took place after he was transported in the back of a police car to the station, right?
Correct.
You noted in your report that Detective Gilbertson had a recorder in his pocket at the time of the interview.
I believe so.
Were there any recordings that took place at the Kohberger home when entry was made into the house?
I do not know.
Where was Mr. Kohberger's car parked at the time of his arrest?
It was in the garage.
Was it later seized pursuant to a search warrant from that garage?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you said that the iPad receipt was found in the car, is that the car that you're referring to?
Yes, ma'am.
That is all the questions that I have for you. Thank you.
Cross-examination.
We have just a moment, Your Honor.
The state doesn't have any clarifications for this witness.
All right, thank you, Detective. You can step down. Actually, can I, if you don't mind, I actually have a question.
Of course.
You testified that you didn't send the affidavits in support of search warrants with the warrants themselves to Google, Apple, et cetera. And the persons that processed the evidence received, would they have knowledge of and access to the affidavit?
Absolutely, Your Honor.
Questions and follow-up to that?
I do. How would people that are getting an email through a portal, Apple, Google, AT&T, how would they have access to the affidavit?
The question was the people that received the evidence, not the people who sent it. So in other words, the police and team that reviewed the evidence, did they have access to it? Not, that wasn't my question.
Okay, I didn't hear you. You do
Just
have.
to clarify.
You do have a soft voice, and I am losing my hearing. So then based on that, how would those folks get access to the affidavit in support of the search warrant when they're reviewing materials?
Just so I'm understanding you, those folks, meaning the people who work for these companies, is that who you're referring to?
No, I think that's not what the judge was
Correct. I
asking.
understand.
He was asking that once that evidence is returned and you log it, his question was, do they have access to the affidavit in support of search warrant?
Right.
And your answer to him was yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
How?
There were paper copies of it. It was no secret. It was shared freely amongst the investigative team.
Okay, but not each person reviewing, various people are reviewing these, the electronic data for the some 67 devices and third-party warrant returns, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And in terms of my question earlier, which was who, I was asking about Apple, who's reviewing that data? Your answer was, I don't know, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So if you don't know who's reviewing something, how would you know that they have access to a search warrant and affidavit?
Well, that's the beauty of having a collaborative team effort. If you share the information freely, it's not independent upon myself to provide that to them. Everybody has that information to reference.
So is in the database that you're creating with this collective, I'll stop this, break this down. My understanding is that the collective document is Exhibit A, correct?
Correct.
And then when you attach Exhibit A to a warrant with Exhibit A to a affidavit in support of a search warrant, you also add additional language depending on who that warrant is for, right?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
So there are over 100 different search warrant affidavits in this case. And it's your testimony that everybody who would have access to doing review of data has access to go in and look at what exact search warrant affidavit was executed?
I believe so, yes.
I have no further questions.
follow-up from the state on that. All right, thank you, Detective.
Judge, I think we don't need to step away, but I do need a break to organize my
Okay,
documents
just watching.
for the next witness, who will be Detective Mowry.